Okay, let's see about getting our reflection happening on our web button. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hold down Command or Control, again, if you're on the Windows side, and I'm going to load in layer 1 as a selection again, just by clicking on his layer thumbnail there. There we go. There's our marching ants. And I'm going to go and create a new layer. This is going to be our reflection layer there. You can rename these guys if you want. I'm not bothering here, but you certainly can if you want. Now, there's a couple of different ways to actually get the reflection happening here. I'm going to use my elliptical marquee tool. Go ahead and grab that fella if you want. And make sure that your style menu up on the options bar is set to normal. And what I want to do here is I essentially want to create a new selection based off of the existing marching ants, based off of the existing selection. So check this out. Hold down Option, or if you're on the PC, hold down Alt, and hold down the Shift key as well. And then start sort of above and to the left of the image, sort of where I am here. And then click and drag right across, maybe over here somewhere, about halfway down maybe, on the right-hand side, maybe something like this. I'm trying to get it sort of even on both sides there as well. Let go with your mouse, and that's what we're left with. So now we have the original marching ants combined with our sort of the bottom edge of our ellipse there. Okay, very cool. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I want to fill this with some kind of a reflection. We're going to do that with our gradient tool. So hit the G key on your keyboard for the gradient tool. Make sure the front color swatch, or the foreground color swatch, I should say, at the bottom of the toolbox is set to white. So you might have to hit the D key and then hit the X key or something like this, but make sure that white is in the foreground. And then way up on the options bar, your gradient dropdown, make sure you're set to the second swatch there, foreground to transparent, or as I lovingly call sometimes, foreground to nothing. That's what we want there. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my cursor towards the sort of the top center of my button here, just above the marching ants. Click and drag down just below the marching ants, something like that. And there's our reflection happening there. I'm going to go ahead and deselect, Command D, and there we go. There's our reflection happening there. Now, what you can do if you want is you can head over to the Layers panel and you can reduce down your opacity a little bit if you want. If it's a little bit too strong for you, maybe, you can always drop it back. You can always fade it back, or maybe bring it, bring it a little more into focus, something like that there. There we go. That looks pretty cool, I think. All right. No button is complete without text, is it? So let's throw in some text here. I'm going to grab my type tool just by hitting the T key on my keyboard. And I'll single click here and we would type in our button text. Maybe this is going to be the home button, or maybe the about us button, or contact us, or whatever. I'm going to type in home here. And it doesn't really matter what color you use for your text, by the way. I'm going to use white for mine though. And as always, I'm going to use my free transform trick to scale up my text. Again, I'm holding down Shift as I'm scaling up my text, something like that. Use my arrow keys to nudge that into place. Something like that I think looks okay. It's a little too harsh though, isn't it? Let's throw on some layer effects, some layer styles to kind of soften this a little bit. So here we go. Find your text layer over inside the Layers palette. Double click on the right hand side to get into your layer style dialog box. And let's see what we can do here. I'm going to start off with a drop shadow. So head down to drop shadow. I'm going to set the opacity for my drop shadow. I'm going to drop that down to just 25%. I'm going to set my distance to 0. Make sure that spread is also set to 0 and that size is set to 5. Now, if you're sitting there going, well, okay, that's not much of a drop shadow, again, you can always uncheck your drop shadow to get that sort of that before and after. So there's just a nice soft shadow now behind my text, which looks kind of cool. I'm going to go down to inner shadow next, and I'm going to drop the opacity here all the way down to just 10%. I'll set the distance to 0, the choke to 0 as well, and the size, I'm going to bring that up to 10. And again, you might want to do a sort of a before and after there. That is definitely on there. There we go. Let's do one more here. Bevel and emboss. Go ahead and turn on bevel and emboss. I'm going to set the depth of my bevel and emboss to just 1%. So he's really tiny there. I'll set the direction to down, the size to 0, the soften value I'll leave at 0, and then down towards the bottom we have highlight mode and shadow mode. I'm going to drop both of these opacities down to just 30%. There we go, something like that. Again, you might want to do a before and after, but that to me looks much better. It's much softer. When I had originally typed it in, it was kind of harsh and blocky looking. And of course, maybe if I change the font or, something like this, that would help it out a little bit. I'm using kind of a hard-edged font here. But what's cool about this, because we've applied all those layer styles now, what I would do is I would use my Save for Web and Devices dialog box. I would probably save this guy out as a JPEG because there's some soft edges in there and some glows and things like this. So I'd use my Save for Web and Devices dialog box to save them out as the home button. And then let's say, for example, the next button in my menu would be About. Well, I would hit my T key on the keyboard. I would select the home text. It's still fully editable text, right? Even though I have all those effects applied to it. And I would simply type in About, right? Now I might have to do a little bit of positioning and adjust my kerning and all that good stuff. And then save that guy out. And then go on to the next label and the next label and so on, right? So that's kind of the cool way to go about creating web buttons in Photoshop, especially Web 2.0 shiny, reflecty buttons. There you go. Hope you enjoyed.